Title: Farmer uncovers a terrible secret about his children after humiliating meeting with millionaires. Chapter 1: The Mysterious Beginning. An unsettling air clung to the old farmhouse, as if time itself dared not disturb its worn wooden beams. Shadows flickered across the walls, twisting and contorting like ghosts of the past. Outside, the chilling howl of a distant wolf echoed through the twilight, sending shivers down John's spine. Something was wrong, and it had nothing to do with the drafty windows or the overgrown fields. It was a feeling, a prickly sensation at the back of his neck, foretelling that dark secrets lurked just out of sight, waiting for their moment to unravel. Earlier that night, John had been ridiculed at a charity gala, a lavish event, filled with people draped in silk and shining with jewels. They laughed at him, a mere farmer in a feed-stained shirt, standing awkwardly amidst the elite. The laughter tore through him, each chuckle like a blade. But as he looked around the room, he noticed something strange, an unspoken agreement among them, eyes narrowing when his children joined the fray, wronged yet desperate for acceptance. He returned to his farm under a blanket of stars, their twinkling indifference mocking his own pain. But when he stepped inside, a chilling realization gripped his heart. The farmhouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, the walls whispering secrets he never wanted to hear. His children were gathered in a corner, their hushed voices barely audible over the creaking floorboards. They exchanged furtive glances, their faces a blend of excitement and fear that chilled him to the bone. "Dad," they started, their words faltering like leaves trembling in the autumn breeze. Unable to contain his suspicion, John pressed them, and in that moment their carefully constructed facade shattered. They were not just the simple children he raised. They were heirs to a fortune, hiding behind a veil of deception. They revealed their plans, grand ideas to dismantle the farm, to chase after wealth and status, everything he had fought to build, disappearing in their ambitious dreams. Betrayal clawed at him, raw and bitter. The very children he nurtured had turned against the life he cherished, seen as a mere obstacle in their quest for acceptance. As his heart pounded, memories of his own past flickered to life. His youth spent among those same millionaires who now spurned him. Would they even recognize him? Just as John gathered his thoughts to confront them, a sleek, polished car glided into his driveway, shattering the uneasy standstill. A representative of the elite stepped out, dressed to the nines, a stark contrast to the faded jeans and work boots he wore. A mix of anger and despair swirled within him, tightening his chest as the fog of confusion thickened. What were they doing here? John stood on the edge of his fields, the vibrant greens bathed in a silvery moonlight. He felt the weight of his choices crashing down around him, anger pulsing through his veins, squeezing his heart. Just then the sound of that luxury car's engine rumbled ominously, and with it came a fresh wave of uncertainty. What confrontation awaited him now? Would he lose not just the farm, but everything he believed about family? John's heart raced as the sleek car rolled closer, its headlights cutting through the night like a knife. He felt exposed out there, the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders. His children stood back, silent, wide-eyed, with fear and anticipation, the air thick with unspoken truths. The stranger emerged, face illuminated by the glow of the headlights. The man was tall, his tailored suit crisp against the nighttime backdrop, mocking in its elegance. John's fists clenched at his sides, frustration bubbling just below the surface. What could these millionaires want now? "Mr. Henderson," the man called out, his tone smooth, almost too sweet. Too rehearsed. The name sent a shiver down John's spine. He hadn't heard Mr. Henderson in years, not since that fateful day when he decided to leave that world behind. "What do you want?" he barked, his voice rising, echoing in the stillness of the night. But the man ignored the question, eyes shifting to John's children. "You all look just like her," he said, a thin smile stretching across his face, revealing teeth too perfect. "Your mother would be proud." At the mention of John's late wife, a raw wound tore open in his chest. The mention of her name had always possessed a power to pierce straight through his defenses. "What do you know about her?" Panic clawed at his throat. "And what do you know about her?" The man countered, his eyes narrowing. "You never wanted to know the truth, did you? You only wanted to play farmer." John's hands trembled, bone-deep anger igniting within him. "Get off my land! You don't belong here!" But just as he finished his sentence, a blaring sound broke through the tension. A siren. Bright lights flooded the driveway, illuminating faces that had gone pale with shock. A police car had arrived, and with it, a stern officer stepped out. "We've received reports of a disturbance. Is everything all right here?" "It's not your business," John shouted, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. He was desperate, his heart racing, knowing he was losing control of the situation. The polished man turned his attention to the officer, a flicker of amusement flashing across his eyes. "Oh, officer." This man is in denial. He's hiding something monumental, something these children don't even know. His voice was teasing, as if he held the keys to a devastating truth. John's mind raced, confusion and dread mixing like a storm inside him. Children stepped closer, eyes darting between their father and the man from the car. What truth? What could this stranger possibly know? The officer assessed the scene, the tension prickling in the air. What's he talking about? Before John could respond, his eldest daughter, Emma, spoke up, her voice quivering. "Dad, is there something you haven't told us?" John's heart dropped. Their eyes, once innocent, were filled with uncertainty, a mirror to his own turmoil. Every breath came hard, the walls of his world shaking under the weight of their words. What had he kept hidden? "Dad, are we really just farmers?" The doubt etched in Emma's face nearly brought John to his knees. And in that moment, the polished man leaned closer, a triumphant glint in his eye. "Oh yes, you very much are. But you come from a lineage that means so much more. You've all been shielded from the truth." The words hung heavy in the air, a suffocating silence enveloping them. What truth? Suddenly the world spun. John's thoughts raced, each memory sparking with doubt. Phrases his wife had whispered, hints dropped in conversations, faces he had seen in passing that looked too familiar. "Who are we?" came a whisper from his youngest child, breaking the heavy silence. And as dread wormed its way into John's heart, he realized with a chilling certainty the secrets of their past were just beginning to unravel. The silence hung in the air like a heavy fog. John's heart thundered in his chest as he looked at his children, their faces etched with confusion and fear. "What truth?" he murmured, his voice barely audible, swallowed by the tension. The polished man leaned in closer, a predator savoring the moment. "Your mother," he began, a smirk dancing on his lips. "She didn't just leave you a farm. She left you a legacy, one you have barely scratched the surface of." "What are you talking about?" John shot back, anger flaring in his chest. He could feel his daughter's eyes boring into him, each accusation they never voiced weighing down on his shoulders. "You don't know anything about us." But the man ignored him. You come from wealth, yes, but it is much older than the green grass of this farm, an estate hidden away, belonging to a family you've been shielded from. A sudden loud bang interrupted him. Everyone jumped. The siren had become frantic, almost wild, as if it sensed the tension rising. Then, to everyone's shock, the officer turned abruptly, drawing his gun, the cold steel glinting menacingly under the moonlight. "Hands where I can see them," he barked. Shadowed by the car's lights, confusion flickered across the faces of John and his children, each one frozen in place, dread curling in their guts. "What the hell?" John started, but his words fell flat as he caught sight of something behind the officer. A figure emerged from the shadows of the trees lining their property, stepping into the harsh light. It was a woman, her silhouette strange and familiar. As she moved closer, recognition carved itself into John's heart, fear intertwining with a shock that left him breathless. "Mom?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling as if caught in a distant memory. The woman was dressed in tattered clothing, her hair wild and unkempt. But the eyes, they were unmistakably hers. "As if we were waiting for you to find us," the stranger in the sleek suit said, his smile vanishing. "Who are you?" John demanded, his heart racing. "I'm your mother," the woman cried, her voice raw. Cracking under the weight of years lost and pain buried deep. "No," John shouted, the world spinning around him. "She died." But she stepped closer, those haunted eyes filling with tears. "You were told lies, John. I had to leave. There were threats. They didn't want us. You were never just a farmer. We carry secrets far beyond this land." The air crackled with disbelief, hearts racing like caged birds trying to escape. Emma stepped toward her mother, the trembling in her hands betraying her longing for a connection she barely remembered. "Are you really?" she whispered, the question thick on her tongue, like syrup, sticky with the past. The woman's gaze softened, yet urgency danced in her posture. "Yes. You're heirs to a power you can't imagine, and they will come for you if they find out." John felt a tightness in his throat. Secrets swirled, crushing his chest. "What power?" he croaked, feeling lost, betrayed by the path he thought was clear. Just then, the sound of another vehicle broke through the reverberations of their reunion. Tires crunching on gravel, lights flashing toward them. A second police car screeched to a halt, sirens blaring. The officer's grip faltered, his eyes darting between the newcomers and John's family. "Get down, everyone," he commanded, panic enveloping the scene. "Mom, please," Emma cried, reaching for the woman, but the tension snapped like a rubber band. "Run," the woman shouted, just as shadows began to emerge from the second vehicle, faces hidden behind masks, intentions shrouded in darkness. And in that moment, the reality crashed down. Everything they believed shattered into a million fragments, each connected to a thread of a past they never understood. They were no longer just a family on a farm. They were stepping into a world of danger, legacy, and truths that could consume them whole. "Why did you leave us?" John shouted into the chaos, voice trembling. But the woman had already vanished back into the dark, and the shadows were closing in. What had he plunged into? As the shadows closed in, the air thick with tension and confusion, John's heart pounded like a wild drum. Emma's soft whimper cut through the chaos. "Mom, please, don't leave again." The urgency tinged her voice with desperation, and John could feel the weight of her fear pressing down on him. But the woman who claimed to be his wife had vanished into the darkness. Fear gripped John. The figures emerging from the second police car drew closer, their movements sharp and deliberate, a pack closing in on prey. "Stay behind me," John shouted, instinctively stepping in front of his children. Each heartbeat echoed in his ears as he strained to hold back the onslaught of panic. The officer's voice rose above the noise, barking orders, but it felt like a distant echo. Then came the sudden Shocking crack of gunfire. John's breath caught in his throat, cold fear gripping his stomach. But it was not aimed at them. A figure crumpled to the ground, no longer a threat, but the conditional silence shattered like glass. The adrenaline surged through John's veins. Who was firing? The chaos mixed with the distant howls of the wolves now seemed like a death knell. In the flickering lights, an unexpected sight caught John's eye. The polished man in the tailored suit, his smug confidence replaced with raw horror. "No!" he shouted, looking towards the fallen figure, his voice filled with shock. "Get down!" another officer yelled, not even glancing at the figure, eyes darting around for the next threat. John's children clung to his arms, their faces pale as their world crumbled around them. But one glance back at Emma shattered his heart anew. Her eyes were filled with something else, a flicker of recognition. "Dad, look," she gasped, pointing toward the ground near the fallen figure. A glint reflected the harsh lights. John's breath hitched. It was a gun, metallic and ominous. What? Before he could finish, the figure who had been shot groaned and stirred. John's mind whirled. This was no ordinary encounter. As the dust of the chaos settled, the truth burst forth like a dam breaking. It was not just any stranger lying there. It was another man from John's past, a long-lost friend who had turned adversary. "Nick?" John breathed, recognition slicing through the tension. But there was confusion on Nick's face, eyes filled with confusion and pain. What happened?" Nick stammered, struggling to comprehend his surroundings, the blood pooling around him. His voice was strained, but urgency laced each word. "You have to listen to me. There's more at stake than you know." The environment shifted with those simple words, pulling the threads of John's life in a direction he never saw coming. "What are you talking about?" John asked, confusion now battling with a deep-seated fear. The chaos was still swirling, but now the air buzzed with something else. Behind them, there was a rustle in the trees. More figures emerged, each cloaked in darkness, faces hidden. The children's hands tightened around John as he scrambled to process the unfolding nightmare. "Don't believe him," the polished man snapped, his previous bravado unraveling under pressure. "He's lying." But as Nick pushed himself up, anguish in his eyes, he revealed something shocking. "You were never just a farmer, John. Your mother had enemies. They'll come for you, for your kids." The punch of his words hit harder than any bullet. John faltered. Dread slipped through the cracks of his carefully built life. Everything he knew shattered. "Get them out of here," Nick shouted, pointing toward the house, desperation dawning on his features. And in that moment, John understood the implications. If Nick was right, if their lives were on the line, everything he held dear could vanish in an instant. But suddenly, there was a loud bang from the trees. An explosion illuminated the night sky, followed by a blinding light. John felt the force wave through him, knocking him off his feet. The world spun, screams mixed with an unholy roar as shadows swarmed the lawn. Time twisted, everything went dark. And in that shroud of chaos, John realized the ultimate truth, how much of his past had been a lie, and whether they would escape this nightmare alive. What power rested in his blood? What legacy had he hidden from his children? And would he ever be able to protect them from the truth? The world spun in a dizzying blur. John's thoughts were muddled, and fear gripped his heart. He lay flat on the ground, dazed. The deafening roar swallowed everything. Tears pricked his eyes as dust and smoke swirled around him. "Emma! Kids!" His voice trembled, scraping against the panic rising in his throat. As he pushed himself up, his chest ached, constricted by dread. His eyes darted around, searching for the familiar faces of his children. The chaos had swallowed them, the darkness and the smoke blending into a nightmare. But then he saw Emma. She was kneeling, a look of horror plastered across her face. "Dad!" she cried, pointing toward the shadows that danced just beyond the beam of light. John's heart dropped as he turned to follow her gaze. There, emerging from the fog, was the woman, the one who claimed to be his wife. She stumbled, then fell, the light catching her as she gasped for breath. "Mom!" Emma screamed, eyes wide with a mix of hope and confusion. "Get away from her!" John yelled, but he didn't move, a primal instinct binding him to the spot. The polished man had regained composure, his face shifting to grim determination. "This is all part of the plan, John," he shouted over the chaos, eyes gleaming with malice. "You can't protect them." John felt his body tense. "What are you talking about?" But the polished man ignored him, shifting focus to the woman on the ground. "You're too late," he cackled, a manic edge creeping into his voice. As if triggered by those words, another blast erupted, this time closer. The shock wave hit like a cold slap, knocking John to the dirt. Distant shouts layered over the chaos, each one a battle cry. Time seemed to warp. Horrifying confusion spiraled around him. Would they all survive this night? Emerging from the gloom, figures cloaked in dark uniforms surged forward, knives glinting sharply in hand. The chaos exploded with the crack of gunfire again, ripped from the shadows. John's heart raced. It felt unreal. The world was shattering, but it wasn't over yet. "Dad!" Emma shrieked again, pulling at his shirt. Then, without warning, she lunged towards her mother. "No! Mom!" John pushed himself up, but something stopped him. A glimmer caught his eye. It was Nick, the wounded friend, struggling to stand. Blood dripped from his side, but his gaze was fierce. "You need to know the truth," he rasped, sounding like an echo from the past. "What truth?" John shouted, desperation seeping into his words. Just then, as if the universe decided to rip apart the very fabric of their lives, a flash of brilliance illuminated the scene. A figure stepped from the spotlight, face lit with certainty. "Enough," she declared, voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. She was dressed in a sharp, dark suit. Familiarity clawed at John, and every ounce of breath left him as the truth struck. "Mom?" he gasped. "No, this couldn't be right. I faked my death, John," the woman said, her tone firm, yet laced with regret. "I did it to protect you, to protect all of you." Staggering backward, John blinked. Doubt twisted inside him like a knife. "But why? Why now?" "Because," she paused, her voice cracking as shadows pushed against them. "They will come for our legacy, to destroy our bloodline. You were never just a farmer. We are meant for something much greater." Then came another shot, ringing through the night, this time aimed directly at the woman. Time froze. John's heart stopped as he watched the bullet arc through the air, landing with a sickening thud. The world collapsed around him as she fell, body crumpling to the ground, just as the screams arose anew. John's world, his children, his wife, everything he thought was true, was consumed in darkness. And in that breathless silence, chaos reigned. What had he unleashed? What secrets had he yet to uncover? With his heart pounding in confusion and despair, He realized the looming shadows were not just threats. They were challenges, compelling him to dig deeper into an unknown legacy. Would he have the strength to face them? As the night air thickened with dread, John's mind spun in circles, the shadows mingled with screams, chaos spiraling out of control. And as he fought to comprehend the nightmare playing out around him, a sudden, gut-wrenching thought clawed its way into his mind. Everything he knew was teetering on the edge of oblivion. "Mom!" Emma screamed again, lunging toward the fallen figure. But it was like trying to reach a mirage in the desert. The shroud of gun smoke curled around them, choking the air, and John screamed her name, wanting to pull her back, to keep her safe. But she was already at her mother's side, fear etched on her face, fingers trembling as they brushed against her mother's still body. "Get away! Emma, no!" John roared, rushing forward, heart pounding, breaths labored. He wanted to scream at the madness, to rage against the whirlwind of bullets and chaos, and just as he reached them, a deafening explosion cracked the night, brighter than daylight, blinding him momentarily. John shielded his eyes, stumbling back. Everything shook around him, the ground seeming to tremble with the weight of their nightmare. When the world righted itself, panic gripped his chest. The bodies around them had shifted, the figures cloaked in darkness fizzling. The polished man's expression twisted, and John's instinct screamed the danger wasn't over. And then something horrifying happened. From the shadows of the explosion emerged another familiar face. It was his father. "Rick?" John's voice wavered. Confusion twisted within him. His father had disappeared long ago, leaving behind nothing but questions, spirit fading like smoke. But there he stood, alive, and looking right at John, eyes filled with anger and something else. "Dad, how?" Everything clashed in John's mind, chaos swirling, heart racing. He had so many questions. But Rick only stepped forward, interjecting, "We need to move, now." John felt time stretch painfully. Did he really want to run with this man he'd long since buried in his past? But just then Nick's hoarse voice cut through the haze. "If he's here, they've found us." The air shifted. John turned, suddenly aware. Their enemies were already searching. A flicker of urgency sparked within him. "John!" Emma cried, pulling him back from his thoughts. Her eyes brimmed with tears, desperation clawing at her voice. "What's happening? Who is he?" I don't know," John faltered, feeling everything slip. He turned back to Rick, but the fury in those familiar eyes burned into him. It chilled him to the bone. "I tried to protect you," Rick hissed, voice low, filled with a tension that nearly snapped. "I had no choice. I had to leave." "Is that supposed to make it better? You left me," John shouted, the pain echoing through the night like a distant wolf's howl. But before Rick could retort, the sound of heavy footsteps broke through the tension. Dark figures emerged again, their intentions apparent. There were too many of them, swarming like locusts, and John's thoughts raced. "Run!" Rick shouted, pushing past John. But everything shattered with a single scream. One of the dark figures, the one John barely recognized, lobbed something at Rick, shattering the fragile veil of their reality. A grenade. Time slowed as it tumbled through the air, disgrace and fear etched on John's soul. In instinctive terror, he lunged forward, desperate, to save the man he hadn't seen in years. "Dad, no!" The explosion echoed like thunder, deafening him. A blinding light engulfed them. And in those harrowing moments, when his life spiraled into pure chaos, John saw his father, caught in the fragments of the blast. The furious twist of emotions broke something deep inside him. A switch flicked, a new truth dawning. Amidst the rubble and screams, something inside John shifted. Could Rick really be the monster hiding in the shadows? Was the legacy a power as dark as it was promising, something his father had kept secret all along? And how would he protect his children from not just the outside world, but the blood running through their veins? With everything collapsing around them, he gritted his teeth, nausea swirling within him. This wasn't just about their enemies anymore. This was about the hidden truths lurking in the past. What did it all mean for them, for their future? John felt the air thicken. He needed to decide, and time was running out. The explosion rang in John's ears, the world around him spinning in chaotic colors. Adrenaline pulsed through his veins as the debris settled, leaving dust in the air like a thick blanket. He tried to call for Emma, but his voice was lost, swallowed by the weight of confusion and fear. His heart raced, a wild drum pounding against his chest. He blinked through the haze, struggling to see. Emma's silhouette bent over her mother, hands trembling. Desperation filled the air, thick like the smoke swirling around them. "Mom!" she cried again, but the figure remained still. John sprang toward them, but the world trembled again, and shadows lurked. The polished man called out, "You're all in." "Danger! Get the children!" He barely registered the urgency before Nick's voice cut through, desperate and raw. "John, now! We have to move!" There was something in Nick's tone, a frayed edge of emotion that sent ice coursing through John's veins. But it was too late. The explosion had drawn every hidden threat from the dark. Figures were moving, shifting through the smoke, and John felt dread claw its way up his spine. The night air crackled with danger. Rick pointed toward a path behind the barn. "This way, there's a shelter, hurry!" But as they started running, a scream pierced through the chaos. It was Emma. "Dad, help!" John turned, dread pooling in his stomach. He saw her, pointing, eyes wide. She was staring at Nick, who now slumped against a nearby tree, the blood drenching his shirt. Time stopped. John froze, confusion spilling over. "Nick!" He rushed back, heart pounding in his throat. "I'm okay. Just listen to me." Nick's voice trembled, each word a struggle. "There's something you don't know about the legacy, about your mother." John's chest tightened. "What do you mean, my mother?" Before Nick could respond, a loud clash erupted nearby. A dark figure emerged, and everything seemed to happen in slow motion. John's instincts kicked in. He saw the figure raise something, another weapon aimed straight at them. "Get down!" John screamed, pushing Emma aside. But just as he did, Nick stood up, his eyes fierce, directing all his remaining strength. "No, it's too late for me." A blinding light followed as he ran into the path of danger, shielding John and Emma. The shot fired, the world erupted. Nick fell, a look of fierce defiance lingering on his face, like a fading ember as he crumpled to the ground. Time stood still. John's heart shattered, the pain seeping deep into his bones. "Nick!" John shouted, scrambling to his friend, tears stinging his eyes. But it was like running through mud. The world was closing in, chaos swirling, refusing to give him answers. In that instant of despair, something shifted. A voice broke through the madness. "He's not who you think." Everyone turned. Rick stood, face contorted, anger and fear merging. "Nick isn't your ally, John. He works for them." John reeled, confusion crashing over him like waves. "What? Nick would never!" But the truth pierced through. Rick's voice trembled with urgency. "He's a double agent. He never cared about us. only about manipulating our past for their own gains. John felt like the ground had vanished beneath him. No, that's not true. I swear it's true, Rick continued, voice rising. I had to leave to protect you. They were watching us, waiting for the right moment. Nick was always planning to betray us. And then it hit him, a truth so profound that his world flipped upside down. Every moment they shared, every risk taken, was it all a game? John's breath caught in his throat. As if sensing the revelation, Nick struggled, eyes darting between John and Rick. You have to believe me. I didn't know. But John no longer knew what to believe. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs, anguish spilling over as he looked at his children. The fear in Emma's eyes mirrored his own. We have to go, he shouted, panic tightening his chest. But before they could act, shadows breached the edge of the scene, dark figures emerging, weapons glinting ominously. And in the chaos, John caught a glimpse of something far more terrible, a symbol etched across the chest of one of the advancing shadows. A family crest, their family crest. And as realization settled in, John's world shattered. The legacy he had wanted to keep hidden was not just a past he abandoned. It was a truth entwined deeply within his bloodline, a dangerous power drawing them all in, whether they liked it or not. Run, he yelled, sense of urgency climbing. But even as they fled, one question hung heavily in the air. Were they running toward salvation or into an even deeper mystery that would change everything? With shadows closing in, John felt his panic spike. Rick's face loomed close, taut with fear. Come on, just move, he shouted, urgency slicing through the chaos. He grabbed Emma's arm, a protective instinct flaring. But as they turned to flee, a scream pierced the air. The shadows were racing towards them now, creeping closer, spirits of darkness drawn to the blood and fear. Run! Don't look back, John barked, launching forward, but it only took a second for everything to unravel. Suddenly, Emma gasped, her voice cracking. Dad, she stumbled, suddenly falling to the ground, and John's heart sank. He darted back, not caring for any danger. Kneeling beside her, dread surged through him like ice. What's wrong? Trembling, she clutched her chest, eyes wide. I can't breathe. John felt the world tilt, a storm brewing in his gut. Emma, stay with me. Panic clawed at his throat as he worked to calm her, but before he could reach for his phone, a blinding light flickered behind him. The polished man sprang forward, a wicked grin etched across his face. We've got what we came for, he sneered, and in an instant, everything shifted. The shadows around them surged, moving like one living entity. Give me your daughter, he commanded, voice ringing with chilling authority. John surged to his feet, fists clenched, heart thundering. No, you'll never touch her! Behind him, Rick was shouting frantically. John, get them to safety, now! But John couldn't. He wouldn't let anyone harm Emma. Then, just as the polished man seemed poised to strike, everything exploded into chaos again. A piercing screech erupted, more powerful than the blast before. It shook the ground under their feet. John turned, fear gripping him. Through the dust and noise, a figure emerged from the wreckage. Time froze. It was his mother, the woman he thought lost forever. John, she cried, rushing forward, eyes brimming with something close to madness. Mom, John whispered, disbelief gripping him. Was it really her? You're alive? She reached out, trembling, as she met his wide-eyed stare. Heart racing, he stepped back, unsure what to believe. What is happening? He breathed, confusion flooding his thoughts. But before she could answer, a loud bang echoed, and the ground shook violently again. The polished man's grin faded. No, he shouted, stepping back in horror. And then it hit John. The answer clanged in his mind like a bell tolling. The truth. "You sold us out, didn't you?" he spat, looking at the polished man. "You set us up." In a moment of chaos, John's gaze flickered toward his mother. "You knew, didn't you?" he pressed. She shook her head violently, hair flailing in the wind. "I didn't want to." "Didn't want to what? Protect me? Or betray me?" The hurt in his chest swelled, threatening to break free. Before she could respond, Emma gasped louder, writhing on the ground. "Dad, help!" Everything snapped into place, then clicked apart again. The polished man lunged forward, reaching for Emma. John reacted like lightning, pushing past the daze of confusion. But before he could reach her, the shadows engulfed them all. The polished man glistened with dark triumph. "No!" John shouted, fully aware that everything he feared was crashing down around him, his family torn, truth unraveling. "Emma!" But it was too late. In an instant, the shadows morphed into one dark force, a wave of energy that unleashed a blinding light. And as the world exploded into brilliance, a final revelation dawned on John. In that moment of blinding light, he saw who was truly behind all this. It wasn't the polished man at all. It was his mother, a glint of something dark in her eyes, aligning with the shadows. And then everything went silent, emotions hanging in the air like shards of lost hopes. Had he truly known her at all? Had everything been a lie? The world faded into darkness as the truth shattered around him, leaving him gasping in disbelief, racing thoughts a cacophony in his mind. What had he stepped into? Who were they really? And were they all destined to be consumed in this waking nightmare? The blinding light enveloped John, searing through his senses. And in an instant, it faded. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. He blinked, confusion wrapping around him like a cold embrace. Where was he? The shadows, his mother, Emma, it all felt like a bad dream. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog, but something was wrong. The air had changed. It was thick and electric, buzzing with an impending storm. He looked around, but everything felt off-kilter. Shapes flickered in the distance, like ghosts, dancing between reality and illusion. "Emma!" he shouted, voice hoarse. Panic tightened around his throat. He turned, but the darkness shifted, swallowed her whole. "Dad!" A voice echoed back, distant, taunting him. Each heartbeat pounded louder than the last, the fear thrumming in his veins. He staggered forward, desperate. "Emma, where are you?" His voice cracked, raw and aching. But then, in the fading light, he saw them. Figures emerging, faces half illuminated. Rick stood beside the polished man, his expression twisted with something between rage and dread. "Stop right there," Rick shouted, eyes glaring at John with a fierce intensity. "You shouldn't have come here." The chaos around them faded, and all that mattered was this moment. "What do you mean?" John's voice trembled, legs feeling weak beneath him. "What have you done?" The polished man's lips curled into a sinister grin. "Oh, you really don't want to know," he sneered, stepping closer. Time slipped away as John felt the weight of realization crash down. "Where's Emma?" he demanded, fists clenched. But the polished man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, something glinting in the dim light. It was a locket, a familiar locket, his mother's. "Where did you get that?" John gasped, all breath leaving him. "It's a family heirloom," the polished man purred, twisting the locket between his fingers like a toy. "Or so I hear." The air crackled with tension, and John felt his chest tightening. "What did you do to her?" Rick stepped forward, the fire in his eyes igniting. "He knows everything, John. We've been watching you. All this time." John stumbled back, shock coursing through him. "What do you mean, we? Watching? What have you all been hiding?" Just then, another wave of energy buzzed through the air, and the shadows shifted once more. A figure appeared beyond them. Emma stood, but she was different. "Emma!" John yelled, relief flooding his senses. But as she stepped closer, the light caught her face, and everything shattered again. Her eyes were colder, a flicker of something dark behind them. "Dad," she whispered, voice chillingly calm. "I need you to understand." "Understand what?" John's stomach twisted. "I've been working with them," she said, her words slicing through him like glass. "All of this, it's been part of the plan." "No," John shouted, emotions swirling. "You can't be serious. You're with this monster?" But Emma's gaze didn't waver. It was unnervingly steady. "They told me the truth, Dad. About our legacy. About who we really are." John's heart stopped. Questions twisted in his mind like a storm. "What truth?" Then, without warning, the polished man laughed, a triumphant sound that sent chills down John's spine. "Looks like the family secret is finally out. You all really thought you were just common folk, didn't you?" Emma nodded, eyes shining with an eerie illumination. "I am part of something much bigger, Dad. You too. It's why they've been after us." Dread pooled in John's gut, the truth threatening to drown him. "No, it can't be. Emma, this isn't you." Tears pricked the corners of his eyes. She stepped closer, and he saw it. The undeniable certainty in her movements. The weight of her choices. "It's time to embrace what we're meant to be." As the darkness closed in, John felt his heart shatter. What had he lost? What was this sister he barely recognized? And would he ever get his daughter back? The ground shifted beneath him again, reality falling apart. The polished man stepped forward, grin wider, and John braced for the inevitable. "Welcome to the truth, John. You're not just a farmer. You're destined for so much more." And as the shadows swept in, doubt latched onto him tightly. How deep did this deception go? John's heart raced as he faced Emma, the girl he'd raised, now standing before him, her eyes reflecting shadows that twisted the love they once shared. "This can't be you, Em. You're better than this." His voice cracked, desperation clawing at his throat. "Dad, it's who I was meant to be," she replied, calm and steady in a way that both terrified and confused him. "You don't understand the power we have, the legacy we've been given." She glanced at the polished man with a flicker of admiration. "Your legacy?" John spat, anger boiling in his chest. "You were never supposed to have any of this. You were supposed to live." But as his words faded into the charged air, reality shifted again. The shadows swirled, and the polished man's grin widened. "You're too late, John. They're already here for you." In that moment, the ground trembled as dark figures appeared, emerging from the swirling chaos like puppets pulled by strings. Fear surged through John. He couldn't lose Emma. Not like this. "Run!" John shouted, grabbing Emma's hand. He pulled her, and they dashed backward, through the shadows closing in. But something held her back. "I can't leave them," she cried, twisting in his grip. "They understand me." "No, they want to use you," John shouted, urgency flooding his voice. His heart pounded violently, terror gripping his chest. "You're my daughter. You belong with me." As if the universe hung in balance, Emma's gaze faltered, hesitation flickering in her eyes. "But Dad, trust me," he urged, feeling the ground quake with every second of indecision. "You don't have to do this. We can go home." Suddenly, a shot rang out, piercing the air as shadows danced, twisting into chaos. John turned just in time to see the polished man stagger, the grin fading from his face. "No!" he roared. But it was the darkness that inhaled his scream, thick and suffocating. The shadows surged forward, blurring lines of reality, and suddenly Emma was slipping from his grasp. "Dad!" she shouted, and desperation twisted in John's gut. He lunged forward, the chaos engulfing them. But she vanished into the dark, leaving him to scramble back, heart pounding. He looked around wild-eyed, confusion and dread flooding in. "Emma, where are you?" he screamed, panic tearing through him like wildfire. And in that very moment, a warmth suffused the air, cutting through the chill of despair. A light flickered, and there she was, caught in a beam of brilliance, the shadows retreating. "Dad, help," she cried. But something danced in her eyes, a spark he feared. The polished man groaned, struggling against the ground. "You're making a mistake, John. Let her go." John hesitated. "Emma, come to me." He felt like a marionette, strings cut without direction, lost between wanting to save her and the truth that echoed in his mind. "Stay away from her," John's voice thundered as he steeled himself, stepping toward her. Emma hesitated again, but the pulled thread of family flickered. "Please, Em," he said, softer now. Desperation slipping in. "We can leave all this behind. Just take my hand." And then, for the first time, she smiled. The warmth in her eyes brightened as she reached out. "Okay, Dad," she whispered, relief mingling with emotion. As their fingers grazed, the polished man gasped. "No, you'll never escape this," he spat. But John pressed forward, determined. The shadows recoiled, some flickering to dust, as John and Emma surged toward the light. In one breathless rush, he felt her spirit blend with his as they moved forward together, a rebirth into hope amidst chaos. And just like that, the darkness began to lift. With each step, John felt the weight of his past fall away. His family, their legacy would be theirs to define, not a curse they were forced to inherit. As dawn broke through the horizon, shadows fled behind them, remnants of a fight that had forged them anew. They emerged, hand in hand, stepping into a future bright with promise. The path ahead was uncertain, but John knew they could face anything together. And as they left the remnants of that night behind them, he felt a spark igniting within, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could reclaim the love and life that had once flourished in the heart of their home. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait another second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. If you like stories about farmers, about everyday life on the farm, and want to know what really happens in the daily lives of the biggest farmers in the world, the hidden stories of the richest owners, and the secrets of the farm girls that the media doesn't reveal, check out our virtual book with the most famous and secret stories from the farm. Click on the first link in the video description and get yours now.